Hello and welcome to McIver's Grant Public Library's Chapter Book Story Time. Today we are continuing our journey with Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief. This is the first book in this series by Rick Riordan. He's the author, so he wrote the words. And John Rocco did this beautifully illustrated version that we are using for this chapter book series. I have enjoyed this book so much. We're getting close to the end. Let's go see what happens. This book was published by Disney Hyperion. We're starting on chapter 22, which is called The Prophecy Comes True. And here's a picture of Percy and his friends. The prophecy comes true. Let's find out what happens, okay? We were the first heroes to return alive to Half-Blood Hill since Luke, so of course everybody treated us as if we'd won some reality TV contest. According to camp tradition, we wore laurel wreaths to a big feast prepared in our honor, and then led a procession down to the bonfire, where we got to burn the burial shrouds our cabins had made for us in our absence. Annabeth's shroud was so beautiful, gray silk with embroidered owls. I told her it seemed a shame not to bury her in it. She punched me and told me to shut up. Being the son of Poseidon, I didn't have any cabin mates, so the Ares cabin had volunteered to make my shroud. They'd taken an old bed sheet and painted smiley faces with X'd out eyes around the border, and the word loser painted really big in the middle. It was a fun thing to burn. As Apollo's cabin led the sing-along and passed out s'mores, I was surrounded by my old Hermes cabin mates, Annabeth's friends from Athena, and Grover's satyr buddies, who were admiring the brand new searcher's license he'd received from the Council of Cloven Elders. The council had called Grover's performance on the quest brave to the point of indigestion, horns and whiskers above anything we have seen in the past. The only ones not in a party mood were Clarice and her cabin mates, whose poisonous looks told me they'd never forgive me for disgracing her dad. That was okay with me. Even Dionysus' welcome home speech wasn't enough to dampen my spirits. Yes, so the little brat didn't get himself killed, and now he'll have an even bigger head. Well, huzzah for that. In other announcements, there will be no canoe races this Saturday. I moved back into cabin 3, but it didn't feel so lonely anymore. I had my friends to train with during the day. At night I lay awake and listened to the sea, knowing my father was out there. Maybe he wasn't quite sure about me yet. Maybe he hadn't even wanted me to be born, but he was watching, and so far, he was proud of what I had done. As for my mother, she had a chance to add a new life. Her letter arrived a week after I got back to camp. She told me Gabe had left mysteriously. Disappeared off the face of the planet, in fact. She'd reported him missing to the police, but she'd had a funny feeling that they would never find him. On a completely unrelated subject, she'd sold her first life-size concrete sculpture entitled The Poker Player to a collector through an art gallery in Soho. She'd gotten so much money for it, she'd put a deposit down on a new apartment and made a payment on her first semester's tuition at NYU. The Soho Gallery was clamoring for more of her work, which they called a huge step forward in super ugly neo-realism. There's her sculpture. I've lost my place. There we are. But don't worry, my mom wrote, I'm done with with sculpture, and I've disposed of that box of tools you left me. It's time for me to return to writing. At the bottom she wrote, P.S. Percy, I found a good private school here in the city. I've put a deposit down to hold you a spot in case you want to enroll for 7th grade. You could live at home, but if you want to go year-round at Camp Half-Blood, Half-Blood Hill, she said, I'll understand. I folded the note carefully and set it on my bedside table. Every night before I went to sleep, I read it again and tried to decide how to answer her. On the 4th of July, the whole camp gathered at the beach for a fireworks display by Cabin 9. Being Hephaestus's kids, they weren't going to settle for a few lame red, white, and blue explosions. They'd anchored a barge offshore and loaded it with rockets the size of Patriot missiles. According to Annabeth, who'd seen the show before, the blast would be sequenced so tightly that they'd look like frames of animation across the sky. The finale was supposed to be a couple of 100-foot-tall Spartan warriors who would crackle to life above the ocean to fight a battle and then explode into a million colors. As Annabeth and I were spreading the picnic blanket, Grover showed up to tell us goodbye. He was dressed in his usual jeans and t-shirt and sneakers, but in the last few weeks he started to look older, almost high school age. His goatee had gotten thicker, he'd put on weight, his horns had grown at least an inch, so now he had to wear his Rasta cap all the time to pass as a human. I'm off, he said. I just came to say, well, you know. I tried to feel happy for him. After all, it wasn't every day that a satyr got permission to go look for the great god Pan. But it was hard saying goodbye. I'd only known Grover a year, yet he was my oldest friend. Annabeth gave him a hug. She told him to keep his fake feet on. I asked him where he was going to search first. Kind of a secret, he said, looking embarrassed. I wish you guys could come with me, but humans and Pan... We understand, Annabeth said. You got enough tin cans for the trip? Yeah. And you remembered your reed pipes? Geez, Annabeth, he grumbled, you're like an old mama goat. But he really didn't sound annoyed. He gripped his walking stick and slung a backpack over his shoulder. He looked like any hitchhiker you might see on the American highway, nothing like the little runty boy I used to defend from bullies at Yancey Academy. Well, he said, wish me luck. He gave Annabeth another hug. He clapped me on the shoulder and then headed back through the dunes. Fireworks exploded to life overhead. Hercules killing the Nemean lion, Artemis chasing the boar, George Washington, who by the way was a son of Athena, crossing the Delaware. Hey, Grover, I called. He turned at the edge of the woods. Wherever you're going, I hope they make good enchiladas. Grover grinned, and then he was gone, the trees closing around him. We'll see him again, Annabeth said. I tried to believe it. The fact that no searcher had ever come back in 2,000 years, well, I decided not to think about that. Grover would be the first. He had to be. July passed. I spent my days devising new strategies for capture the flag and making alliances with the other cabins to keep the banner out of Ares' hands. I got to the top of the climbing wall for the first time without getting scorched by lava. From time to time, I'd walk past the big house, glance up at the attic windows, and think about the oracle. I tried to convince myself that its prophecy had come to completion. You shall go west and face the god who has turned. Been there, done that, even though the traitor god had turned out to be Ares rather than Hades. You shall find what was stolen and see it safely returned. Check, one master bolt delivered, one helm of darkness back on Hades' oily head. You shall be betrayed by the one who calls you friend. This line still bothered me. Ares had pretended to be my friend, then betrayed me. That must be what the oracle meant. And you shall fail to save what matters most in the end. I had failed to save my mom, but only because I'd let her save herself, and I knew that was the right thing, so why was I still uneasy? The last night of the summer session came all too quickly. The campers had one last meal together. We burned part of our dinner for the gods. At the bonfire, the senior counselors awarded the end of summer beads. I got my own leather necklace, and when I saw the bead for my first summer, I was glad the firelight covered my blushing. The design was pitch black with a sea green trident shimmering in the center. The choice was unanimous, Luke announced. This bead commemorates the first son of the sea god at this camp and the quest he undertook into the darkest part of the underworld to stop a war. The entire camp got to their feet and cheered. Even Ares' cabin felt obliged to stand. Athena's cabin steered Annabeth to the front so she could share in the applause. I'm not sure I've ever felt as happy or as sad as I did at that moment. I'd finally found a family, people who cared about me and thought I'd done something right, and in the morning most of them would be leaving for the year. I'm going to stop and show you this picture. That's Grover leaving. Do you see the fireworks? Can you see the pictures in the fireworks? The next morning I found a form letter on my bedside table. I knew Dionysus must have filled it out because he stubbornly insisted on getting my name wrong. Dear Peter Johnson, if you intend to stay at Camp Half-Blood year-round, you must inform the big house by noon today. If you do not announce your intentions, we will assume you have vacated your cabin or died a horrible death. Cleaning harpies will begin work at sundown. They will be authorized to eat any unregistered campers. All personal articles left behind will be incinerated in a lava pit. Have a nice day, Mr. D, Dionysus, Camp Director, Olympian Council, number 12. There's another thing about ADHD. Deadlines just aren't real to me and until I'm staring one in the face. Summer was over, and I still hadn't answered my mother or the camp about whether I'd be staying. Now I had only a few hours to decide. The decision should have come easy. 9 months of hero training or sitting in a classroom, duh. But there was my mom to consider. For the first time, I had the chance to live with her for a whole year without Gabe. I had a chance to be at home and knock around the city in my free time. I remembered what Annabeth said so long ago on our quest. The real world is where the monsters are. That's where you learn whether you're any good or not. I thought about the fate of Thalia, daughter of Zeus. I wondered how many monsters would attack me if I left Half-Blood Hill. If I stayed in one place for a whole school year without Sheeran or my friends around to help me, would my mother and I even survive until next summer? That was assuming the spelling tests and 5-paragraph essays didn't kill me. I decided I'd go down to the arena and do some sword practice. Maybe that would clear my head. The campgrounds were mostly deserted, shimmering in the August heat. All the campers were in their cabins packing up or running around with brooms and mops getting ready for a final inspection. Argus was helping some of the Aphrodite kids haul their Gucci suitcases and makeup kits over the hill, where the camp shuttle bus would be waiting to take them to the airport. Don't think about leaving yet, I told myself. Just train. I got to the sword fighters arena and found that Luke had the same idea. His gym bag was plopped down at the edge of the stage. He was working solo, wailing on battle dummies with a sword I'd never seen before. It must have been a regular steel blade because he was slashing the dummies' heads right off, stabbing through their straw-stuffed guts. His orange counselor shirt was dripping with sweat. His expression was so intense, his life might have really been in danger. I watched, fascinated, as he disemboweled the whole row of dummies, hacking off limbs and basically reducing them to a pile of straw and armor. They were only dummies, but I still couldn't help being awed by Luke's skill. The guy was an incredible fighter. It made me wonder, again, how he possibly could have failed at his quest. Finally he saw me and stopped mid-swing. "Percy!" Sorry," I said, embarrassed. It's okay," he said, lowering his sword. "Just doing some last-minute practice. Those dummies won't be bothering anybody anymore." Luke shrugged. "We build new ones every summer." Now that his sword wasn't swirling around, I could see something odd about it. The blade was 2 different types of metal, one edge bronze, the other steel. Luke noticed me looking at it. "Oh, this is a new toy. This is Backbiter." Backbiter. Luke turned the blade in the light so it glinted wickedly. One side is celestial bronze. The other is tempered steel. Works on mortals and immortals both. I thought about what Sheeran had told me when I started my quest, that a hero should never harm mortals unless absolutely necessary. I didn't know they could make weapons like that. "They probably can't," Luke agreed. "It's one of a kind." He gave me a tiny smile and then slid the sword into his scabbard. "Listen, I was going to come looking for you. What do you say we go down to the woods one last time, looking for something to fight?" I don't know why I hesitated. I should have felt relief that Luke was being so friendly. Ever since I'd gotten back from the quest, he'd been acting a little distant. I was afraid he might resent me for all the attention I've gotten. "You think it might be a good idea?" I said. "Oh, come on." He rummaged in his gym bag and pulled out a 6-pack of Cokes. "Drinks are on me." We're going to stop there and see what happens next time, because we're out of time. All right. So next time we'll see what Luke and Percy find to fight in the forest. Have a good day.